Hey recovery family, welcome back to another episode of constructing our virtual inspirational, this direction, 19 different ways. So this week we're going to be talking about some planned self-care. I know it's really easy for us to say, I do self-care, but we need to make sure we're very intentional on the things that we do. I know that's a big part of recovery as a whole, is being very intentional on what I'm doing to improve my life, to make sure I stay in recovery, and also the things that keep me wanting to be in recovery. And I think self-care is a very important part of that. So like I said, I want to make sure that we're planning self-care. We're not just saying we're doing things, because it holds us accountable. When we put things, on paper, we have that physical plan. It makes it a lot easier for us to say, I did or did not do this. And also you can share it with somebody. It's no different than step work or anything else with your network, that you can have other people help keep you accountable. I know for me that I've had periods where I've failed miserably at self-care, and it shows. It definitely shows up in my other parts of my life, how I deal with my family, how I deal with my children, how I deal with my work. It's definitely something I have to maintain. And I have to maintain that on all levels. My boundaries have to be sturdy enough that I can continue doing my self-care. So I have a bunch of notes because I don't want to forget anything for you guys. But first off, customizing a self-care plan is a preventative measure. That's something I want to make sure you guys understand, is that it's not about self-care as a response to something. It's about, let's go ahead and make sure I'm enjoying my recovery journey so that I have a reason to stay in recovery. I know anyone that knows me has definitely heard me say that if, I can be miserable and lonely in my active addiction. I don't have to be sober to be miserable and lonely. So there's no reason for me to do that. If I have very intentional self-care, I can make sure that I'm keeping that fun alive. And also for you guys too. Eventually, I've been waiting on some of the COVID things to die down, and we're gonna have some more activities to where we're going out as groups, to where we're having fun as people in long-term recovery and doing some things that a lot of people haven't done. I know that the Starlight drive-in movie theaters on the docket for as soon as we are able to navigate around the restrictions of gathering and stuff like that. But it is definitely on the docket. I want to do that very, very soon if it's at all possible. So also having a plan takes the guesswork out of things. Like I don't have to necessarily do everything the exact time and the exact minutes, but I need to make sure that I'm saying I'm going to do this weekend for whatever it is. Let's say I'm for the ladies out there especially, take this bubble bath. I'm going to have this time to me. I'm going to relax. I'm going to, send the kids to daycare, let the significant other take care of them, whatever it is, and have an hour or two that is specific to you and your relaxation and keeping your mind in check. There's a lot of other things for me that's like woodworking is a very important one. And I know that's some other topics too, and some hobbies and things, but like for me, I have to have a place to meditate that's not necessarily just meditation. It gets my mind focused on things that are not, if I try to intentionally meditate, sometimes I don't do so well at it because I'm just focusing so hard on clearing my mind that I end up putting more things in there. So sometimes those busy things, like I said, for me, it's kind of woodworking or playing. I've fallen off in holes on my phone so many times, but social media, guys, I don't feel that that's self-care in the sense that there's too much garbage on there that messes with us. There's too much that is true, not true. It just distracts us from our message. Now, if you have a specific group message or something with other positive people in recovery, and that's what you're doing is sharing and focusing on recovery, that may be something that's part of your self-care. But be very intentional and be very careful of what parts of that you use. Also, the self-care plan helps me stay the course. Like I mentioned, is I don't have to be alone. I don't have to be tired and miserable and angry and all those things, because I'm having fun in recovery. I'm enjoying what new life recovery has given me. I'm able to have that time with my family that I never would have had any other way. Like, people didn't want me around when I was high. I don't know about the rest of y'all, but I wasn't very agreeable. So for me to be able to say I'm happy, I'm having fun, and this is where I want to be, that's a big, big thing for me. So first thing we have to do with self-care is make sure that there's something going on. Like, take an evaluation. Do I have self-care in my life? Because when I first was told about self-care, and when I have fun, and then I started looking at it, and I was like, dang, no, I really don't spend that much time on it in respect to the other things, and that's something that has to be done. Now, I'm not saying you got to carve out 2 days a week that's only self-care. That's kind of unreasonable. But at the same time, there needs to be a period that is off limits, that you don't confuse it with anything else. Don't let anything else take precedence. Oh, I'll do it next week. You may not have next week. You need to make sure you're having fun so that you might keep your mind in recovery. There's a lot of things that mess up my self-care, like work. Sometimes the eating habits mess with me because I don't, my work schedule messes with it, but I have to make sure that I'm planning it. Like I said, I'm intentional. So if there's any barriers, drop those down. When you're making this plan, like I said, you can do it if you want, just in your head, but I prefer that you write it down on paper somewhere. Write down some of the barriers. Let's go ahead and create some solutions for those. If I know that the kids are going to be a problem with me relaxing, so how do I deal with that? Do I have a babysitter? Do I take them to grandma's house? Do I have my significant other take care of them? There's a lot of ways to create solutions if I know the problem's coming. It's a lot easier to do it now and plan for it than it is to be up in a hizzy wondering, oh, what happened? How do I do this? It's not the best way to do things. Like you guys all know this in recovery, we make a plan and we follow through with that. And especially if we put it on paper and talk to somebody else about it, we have a much greater chance of following through. So like I said, share your plan with other closest friends. That's the only way you're going to keep yourself accountable, because I'm my own worst enemy. I will convince myself that I'm good, I'm still happy, I'm still having fun, and I may or may not be. My own head can be my worst enemy, and it has been multiple times. So I share things with my friends. I constantly bounce stuff off my coworkers and my family and people that I trust. It goes back to something I said in one of the first episodes, was that I asked myself the question, do they have my best interest at heart? And if they do, that's probably somebody I can trust with some of my self-care plan, because they're going to hold me accountable. They want me to do better. And then, let me flip my notes. So develop these friendships that are supportive with your self-care. So you may not even know you enjoy something. You may pick up a new hobby or something that you find to be self-care. So find some other people that do that are also in recovery. Pool is a really good example, and I know it off the top of my head because I've watched it happen here in the building. Was that two people learn to play pool, they both like it, they start playing together up here. Now they can go into a pool hall together, join a league, play in some tournaments, do things like that, and they have people that's supportive of them in recovery right there with them. So you don't have to fall prey to that stigma of, I'm in a pool hall, I gotta have a beer, I look weird. Those thoughts come about when we're on our own. But if we have a team with us, we have other people that are supportive of the same type of self-care and same type of recovery, we're in there. That's the way it's supposed to be. So also things that just kind of help you around that is writing down like 3 good things that happen each day. Keeps me in the mindset of something positive. So that self-care in itself, it's kind of like minimizing it to the day. Write down 3 good things, just so I know that there's still good things happening, because it's really easy for me to focus and hinge on all that negative. Super easy. It's always the forefront of my mind when something negative is happening, and I miss out on all those little things along the way. The regularly meeting with your social groups and community of care. Okay, like I said earlier, I don't really like social media for that sense. I prefer the in-person. You guys may prefer Zoom or Instagram or Twitter or whatever. It doesn't matter. It's whatever works for you. But for me, I like it to be in person. I like to be face-to-face with people for that support, and I have to regularly meet with people. I guess one of the things that I first did when I was really responding to the pandemic was, what meetings are still in person? Where can I go to see someone else in recovery? And it really wasn't all that easy to begin with, but we ended up having a meeting under a streetlight one night just because nobody else showed up. There was a handful of us and everybody wanted to be there. So that's what we ended up doing. Make sure that your friendships, like I said, are equal. Like if they have your best interests at heart, do I have their best interests at heart? So there's a give and take to that. You don't want to be all one side or the other. That there's a reciprocity there that needs to happen. Make sure that you guys are all on the same page with the ones you're sharing this stuff with. Otherwise, you might get taken advantage of, or you might be taking advantage of someone else. If someone's not so good at speaking up for themselves, your friend may just go along with everything you want, and they may be miserable. Ask them what they want to do. Make sure these groups are interchangeable so that you guys can all meet more people in recovery and find more activities that you're interested in. I've done things that woodworking was something I picked up, and I had no idea I enjoyed it. I'm not an art person. I'm not a crafty person. And And I made a Halloween costume with some, you know, and I ended up enjoying it. I had a good time doing it. I would have never figured that out any other way. Let's see. So one of the barriers that we may deal with is, oh, these people don't have time to meet. So that comes back to that same question. Do they have my best interest at heart? Because I will make time for people I care about. I will put time aside for people I care about. That doesn't mean that I can say, oh, I'm not going to work all week because I care about you. It means that, hey, you know what? I know I don't have to work this weekend, and I have a planned self-care event this weekend. I get to see my oldest daughter from 12 to 4. That's a big deal to me, and that time is off limits to anybody else. You can ask me about anything else outside of that, but that is planned, and it's not going to change because that's exactly what I want to do so that I feel better, so that I can see my family and that I can have that connection and be a part of my daughter's life. So I want to make sure you guys understand when I say make it visual, it doesn't always, you can write this stuff down, but yeah, if you want to do stuff like, hey, you have a whiteboard, this is what I want to do, I can cross it off, I can get a calendar, make it where you see this stuff so that you constantly are reminded. It doesn't mean you have to think about it 24/7. That's not what I'm saying by any means, but you need to be able to be reminded because it's really easy to get all caught up in the hustle and bustle and the panic and the news and this and that and forget about taking care of yourself. That is a very dangerous place to be, especially when we're told to isolate at this time, especially when it just seems like everybody's kind of in a panic at all times. There's still plenty of good people out there. There's still plenty of people wanting to stay in recovery and do things better. Don't focus on the small percentage of the negative out there. There's so much good out there that's another part of my self-care is I got to find the humor in things. I have to do that to keep myself from crying. I laugh instead of cry. That's the only way that I get through some of this stuff because it's a very real thing. We're dealing with a disease of addiction. We're also dealing with the corona stuff. We're also dealing with a very serious social setting. So I have to make sure that I'm taking care of myself so that I can still maintain my sobriety and my sanity. Sticking to the plan, guys. Like this is my final note, that if I don't stick to it, if I fail in certain parts, they may not fail me immediately. I may go months or years before I end up failing in my sobriety, but it will happen eventually if I don't make sure all of my parts of my sobriety stay up and running. I can interchange it at different times. If we got a real busy week, you know, like when we have our conference week, we're super busy. So for that week, we may not have a whole lot of self-care, but I can double up next week, or I can double up before it in preparation for that. Like, make sure you're planning this stuff out around what's actually going on. Now, like I said, I know that the environment that we're in right now is kind of unstable, but it doesn't mean that I can't go ahead and make sure that I'm going to be okay this weekend or today or tonight. I can plan around those things, but I have to make sure I'm making those plans. So I hope this helped you guys out. I know self-care is one that everyone hears and talks about, and it just kind of goes in one ear and out the other a lot of times, or at least I feel that way. I want to make sure that y'all are doing this. Please, please, please reach out. If you have an issue with this, can't think of ideas, call us. Reach out to us. The Facebook pages, I got a whole list of this stuff because I can't ever remember what all we have going on social media, but we have an Instagram, we have the Twitter, we have the Zone and the DEF Facebook pages, we have the Zone groups. There's a lot of things that we have. Please make sure you're liking and sharing this stuff, having watch parties. Get this message out to as many people in recovery as you possibly can because they need it. And if they don't need it, then awesome. At least they can share it with somebody else. Someone down the line needs it, and that's the whole point of this stuff. Also, guys, make sure you stop by and get food. We have tons of food for everyone. If you're in recovery and you're hungry, we will find a way to feed you. Please come by and get this stuff. We don't want it to go to waste. We want to make sure people in recovery are staying safe and staying fed. I think that's about it for today. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll be back on Tuesday at 6 p.m. For the next episode of Constructing Our Virtual Inspirational Direction 19 Different Ways. Thank you very much.